Alright guys, let's talk about Meilin versus Frieren as a water support for the first two stages of the new workshop, both now and in the upcoming hard mode. So I did several training room tests with adjusted stats to try and predict how they would perform in the new workshop and to see which setups perform better in terms of builds, including the artifacts and stats in course, rotations, team synergy, and consistency. You'll find this useful if you're just starting out with a workshop, preparing for the hard mode, or still deciding whether Frieren is actually worth picking up for your water team. Before we begin, just a quick reminder again, don't forget to support me in the SLA Content Creator Program if you love these types of contents. New codes are coming probably this week. Thank you so much once again. Let's begin. So I did the first test in the training room, but the goal here was to mimic actual workshop conditions as closely as possible and later confirm everything in actual combat with boss movements. Each run lasted 4 minutes, same as the workshop timer, just minus a few seconds lost to mechanics, and that's fine since in the training room the timer still continues even during ultimate animations, so overall it's most likely gonna end up close. Now let's break down how the test went. So first, I think it's important to understand the difference between Meilin and Frieren's buffs. Meilin gives mainly defense percent buffs, while Frieren provides constant buffs and debuffs that stay consistent throughout the fight. Now, Water Cha naturally gains large amounts of defense percent every rotation from her weapon, which can go up to 360% at max stacks. So as the fight goes on, Meilin's defense percent buff becomes less effective, basically due to diminishing returns. That's why in longer fights, Meilin's contribution to Water Cha's total DPS becomes less and less noticeable as compared to, for example, Meilin buffing Shu Hua with attack percent as well as the core attack percent damage. So just to show you the difference, at 1, 2, 3, and 4 minute mark, you'll notice Frieren's damage closing the gap over time, except for minute 1 where Meilin's ultimate is still charging up while Frieren can already use hers. Now, to keep the results as close as possible to the real combat situation, I adjusted the stats to simulate workshop scaling penalties. Crit rate reduced to 20%, although it should actually be lower, but it's hard to set the stats that way, and we have crit damage here around 105% only. The first two normal workshop stages are level 118, and we can expect a slightly higher penalty in the hard mode. Also, take note that Meilin's weapon grants damage increase to the ally with the highest attack, so make sure Water Cha has the highest whenever you do your runs and tests. Since the training room also does not apply stat penalties, I removed Frieren's 8-piece blessing set to balance the comparison because I have way too much damage increase percent in the setups that I was able to do. Now, to maintain high total power for the hard mode, I would assume that we will prioritize the use of 8-piece sets, except probably for Water Cha, who runs 4-piece infamy plus 4-piece obsidian here because I think this is a better balance while keeping TP high instead of going 2-2-4. On top of that, it also helps with MP sustain with a 4-piece infamy set effect. And one important information, I have also confirmed that the first two workshop bosses both have around 75% defense, which is about average, same as Power of Destruction. So in that case, the general rule here is to just keep a balanced ratio between penetration and damage increase. However, if your unit already has high damage increase like Obsidian users, like Chahin in this case, prioritize penetration percent instead. Now, just a few more notes for water teams. Just go with Yogamut Remnant. It provides the best benefits. Seorin is an archer, Frieren is a mage, and Water Cha is a fighter. And for shadows, I would recommend Ice Switch for the 8% defense penetration authority and 10% limited duration buff. And since this lineup does not have an increased damage taken debuff, you can slot in Serbi and Biru as your second and third shadow. You can also swap Biru with Iron probably, but personally I just prefer Biru for the longer debuff duration. And just one last thing about the training room, this boss does not have much defense, so the effect of defense penetration is not that high. And same goes for defense decrease debuff, the effect is gonna be minimal. That's why for this test, Frieren's defense decrease does not really show its full value. And to compensate, we can just around 5% more damage to Frieren's numbers just for the sake of fairness. Now for the Frieren team rotation, just start with Seorin, skill 1, then core, skill 2, then QTE. And for Frieren's first rotation, I just use skill 1 and I love using ultimate immediately, hold skill 2, then QTE immediately. So this will be the same concept as Gina, you don't have to wait for the charge skill to finish. And for the second rotation, skill 1 again for paralyze, basic plus core attack to activate the QTE, hold skill 2 and then press the QTE. That way she's casting her skill 2 while you're already starting Cha-In's rotation. And Meilin team rotation is straightforward, same Seorin rotation, and then skill 1, skill 2, core attack with Meilin, QTE to Water Cha, rinse and repeat. And just use the ultimate whenever it's ready. Alright, let's go to the test results. For the first test, I wanted to confirm whether Grid or Desire performs better on Seorin. After a 4-minute test, both had almost identical total damage, but I personally prefer Burning Grid. It's more consistent and activates faster in my opinion, whereas Desire activates much later because it needs 20 stacks and will probably depend heavily on whether your Seorin can deal enough damage to justify the delay in activating its elemental buff. Next, for Meilin versus Frieren, I also got very similar results, but remember this is without Frieren's defense decrease optimal effect, and factoring that in, I would say Frieren has a very slight edge overall, especially in longer fights. Then I also tested which core gives the best DPS for Water Cha in a Frieren lineup. Both cores were close, but the new core with plus 10% crit rate was slightly better, and I would expect that it would perform even better once hard mode releases. Now with Meilin, even though she improves the core damage too, and Water Cha also has a decent amount of core attack damage, the crit rate core still came out on top. And I think the reason is likely because Meilin's crit rate buff has downtime, while Frieren's debuff uptime is almost permanent, so that might be able to explain this situation. So based on everything, my recommended set will be 8-piece Grid for Seorin, Frieren 8-piece Blessing, Water Cha 4-piece Infamy plus 4-piece Obsidian. And for the cores, Water Cha Ferocious crit rate, Crimson Apex mid just for that small amount of defense, and then Teeth of the Watcher for the bottom core. Frieren, Nameless Demon or Arrogant, I don't have that yet, so I haven't tried it yet. And then the middle core is flexible, and then the bottom one is also flexible, but you can use Ferocious just for extra heals. And then for Seorin, you can use your highest level cores for TP. Arrogant Ruler is good for the right side boss for that additional 10% break effectiveness, or Teeth of the Watcher for MP sustain. For the recommended stats, at least 8,000 crit rate. Maybe don't go beyond 10k crit rate anymore, and then crit damage around 190 to 200%. Just balance your defense penetration and damage increase, except for Cha, who should have more defense penetration. And then for precision, around 27,600 against level 118 monsters. That will increase a bit when hard mode comes, because hard mode has higher level. And also when computing your precision, don't forget to take your Remnant into account, which gives 2,000 here and 700 here. So that's 2,700 total. Now let's talk about the workshop gameplay. Boss number 1, he has 3 major mechanics, 75% HP. He will just move to the center. All you have to do is to hit the blue marker with basic attacks and then use extreme evasion on those without. And at 50% HP, it's pretty simple. Just hit it continuously to clear the mech. Even Water Cha's basics can handle it easily. But of course, this could change in the hard mode too. And finally, at 25% HP, all you have to do is to hit the energy spheres with basic attacks. This is where Frieren has a clear edge over Meilin because she fires 3 basic attacks at once, which makes these mechanics much easier, and without her, clearing them could take longer and a bit more annoying. And boss number 2, Lanor, has more mechanics and a break gauge. So what you can do here, after your first 1-2 combo with Seorin, you can switch to Cha manually to build her defense percent stacks while waiting for the break skills cooldown. Alternatively, you can also start with Cha instead to fish that QTE break damage before doing your combo with Seorin, but this will depend on how fast you can actually break. As for the major mechanics, 80% HP, just destroy the structures. I used Seorin here. Just expect that it can be tankier with the hard mode or maybe even increased number of towers. 60% HP, just avoid the pizza mech AoE here. Nothing special, very easy. And 40%, all you have to do is to hide behind the towers, similar to Vulcan, and just have to do it twice. Finally, 20% HP, just another simple break mech, which is nothing important really. Overall, here in the second boss, Frieren's advantage is not going to be in terms of damage, it's going to be in comfort and survivability. Her shields and stun makes runs much smoother, while Meilin's team is more prone to getting knocked down or juggled because she lacks crowd control and she does not provide shields to the team. So I think in terms of gameplay here, I think the difference between Frieren and Meilin is going to show because this boss has way too many attack patterns and they're really fast and continuous. Overall, in terms of damage, the gap between Meilin and Frieren is not that big and they will shine in different situations, but when it comes to comfort, control, and consistency, I think Frieren really has the advantage. So that's it for this one. I hope this breakdown helped. If it did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.